It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Christopher Cetta, DMD. He's a board-certified orthodontist who practices with Blue Wave Orthodontics in Bradenton and Tampa, Florida. Dr. Cetta grew up in New Jersey and is a third-generation doctor. He received his undergraduate degree from Wake Forest University in North Carolina and graduated from Rutgers School of Dental Medicine in New Jersey. Dr. Cetta practiced general and cosmetic dentistry for several years prior to specializing in orthodontics at Jacksonville University in Florida. He is the co-inventor of precision aligner buttons by DynaFlex, and has had several articles featured in the Journal of Clinical Orthodontics. Dr. Cetta also plays bass for 2 rock bands, including the all-orthodontic group Relapse. You got to send me a video of that, man. I'll push that video out everywhere. Dr. Cetta currently lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, with his beautiful wife, Nicole, and puppy Jagger. Is that named after Mick Jagger?
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh.
Of course, Mick Jagger. I'm a huge Stones fan.
Oh, my gosh. Well, this is called Dentistry Uncensored, so I don't want to throw you under the bus with the first question, but gosh, you're an orthodontist, and the biggest orthodontic story of the century is Smiles Direct Club going public. Did you have any thoughts on that, or not really? Or would you
Smile Regret Club? Is that what we were discussing?
Well, I haven't heard that one. Smiles Regret Club. What was your take on that? I mean, so the one side is, okay, some entrepreneurs try to do something faster, easier, better, higher quality, lower cost, and give you more for less. And then, of course, the story is, oh, well, the good old boys are trying to keep their system. Where did you see it? Is it the orthodontist trying to protect their turf? Or are they trying to block innovation? Or where did you fall in on this? Or did you not?
I think most orthodontists probably think similarly to most dentists in that, it's not that we're against teledentistry per se, but the biggest concern is that they're seeing patients, they're not taking x-rays, they're not checking for periodontal disease. So, what I learned in school is that was almost malpractice, right? There's certain standards that we as dentists are held to, such as coming up with a proper diagnosis, proper treatment plan. And I just don't see how you can do that remotely with just impressions that you're taking, someone going to a scan center, never properly seeing a patient in person.
When I got out of school in '87, the biggest brands in dentistry were already made, Colgate, Crest, Listerine, all those big names. They all ruled forever. And the only big name that's came out in my 30 years and is even bigger than those 3 is Invisalign. I mean, right. when I go to, when I lecture in Japan, Cambodia, Malaysia, I mean, you can't go anywhere. And once the bartender or the waitress figures out that we're dentists, the first thing out of their mouth is Invisalign. It's like, right. It's like, how am I eating in Cambodia? And they're asking us really good Invisalign questions. Did you ever, when that brand came out, did you see it coming out like that?
It's hard to say. Certainly, they had a huge marketing push. I started off as a general dentist, as you mentioned in my bio. So I actually was doing Invisalign at that time. And, I think when it first came out, the orthodontists weren't quite ready to adopt it. The product really wasn't quite perfect. So, I think maybe dentists were more willing to give it a shot at that time. But, over time, the product really has improved. And, certainly we all know what they've done in terms of marketing.
But all the patents pretty much expired, right? So.
Well, not exactly. So, Invisalign has hundreds of patents really worldwide. Certainly, they have a huge U.S. portfolio. So, really with the line, they had one sort of key patent, and that came out in 1997. And I should qualify this. I am certainly not a patent attorney. But that key patent was called...
But his dog is named after Mick Jagger, so you make your own decision.
Please do. So it's... But that key patent was called Method and System for Incrementally Moving Teeth. And, Invisalign did not invent clear aligners. Clear aligners have been around since the 1940s. It was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Harold Kessling who came up with sort of moving teeth with rubber positioners and aligners. It's probably like a vulcanite material, I'm guessing, at that time. And then from there, a mentor of mine, Dr. Jack Sheridan, the late Dr. Sheridan, who was at LSU, he came up with the Essex material. And so he really started moving teeth. Basically at the time, what they're doing is taking impressions, pouring it up into plaster, using a little jigsaw to move the teeth for maybe some of the younger doctors that weren't familiar with it. But it was sort of a time-consuming process. You could really just make one aligner at a time, having to take a new impression. And Invisalign's big innovation that they came out with was to do this in sort of CAD/CAM that process. So one of their initial patents was how to sort of computerize this process. And that was the one patent that really sort of was holding a lot of the other players back from coming in. So that one did expire. Utility patents are good in the US for 20 years. So in 2017, that particular patent expired, but the majority of Invisalign's patents are still active.
So you talk about Jack Sheridan. Did you know him well, or did you?
Yeah, actually, I was quite lucky that towards the end of his career, after Hurricane Katrina, he relocated to the Jacksonville, Florida area where I did my residency program. So he was my faculty there, and just a brilliant guy, super humble too.
Yeah, I saw him. Was he a board-certified orthodontist?
He was a board-certified orthodontist.
Yeah,
yes,
he used to always. I used to always see him lecture in with Brock Rondeau.
Okay.
Which is a great. He's a Canadian. He's up there in Canada. But anyway, just what an amazing guy. John Joseph Jack Sheridan of Trinity, Florida, died February 2nd, 2018 at the age of 85. With his passing, the orthodontic community has lost one of his true luminaries and most original characters. And he went by Jack. So, you really are making a move in clear aligners with your aligner buttons. Talk about your, and I also think it's fair to say that of all the orthodontists we've had on the show, they're all saying they're about 20% Invisalign or clear aligner and 80% fixed. Or is that where you are at Blue Wave Ortho?
At Blue Wave Ortho, it's a little bit of a different demographic. So at this point, I'd say in that particular practice, which I just started with about a year ago, we're closer to maybe 10% aligners. But my previous practice, I was with a gentleman named Dr. Jason Rothenberg, who's a fantastic orthodontist up in New Jersey. And I'd say we were around maybe 35, 40% aligners.
So what's the difference in the demographics between 35% New Jersey, 10% Florida?
It's a little bit more of a Medicaid-based practice where I'm at now.
In Florida?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of patients are coming in and, they're just preferring the braces. And they feel quite happy to get braces, be able to straighten out their teeth.
Yeah. And what's weird out here in Phoenix, Arizona, I've had patients cry if the mom tries to do Invisalign because they want the braces and the green rubber bands, and they already have the whole concept of braces and the rubber bands and the school colors. And when
kids
you start
are really into colors.
Oh yeah. So when you start talking clear aligners, you're completely destroying her whole bubble.
Yeah. But the colors just come down to being able to express yourself. I think that's why the kids like it. They get to choose their own colors and be able to express, who they are, whether it's their favorite sports team or, like you mentioned, the school colors. Maybe some kids just want black on there. But that's why it's cool. That's why kids are into it.
So tell us your journey. Tell us about your precision aligner buttons. But first, before you sell that, you have to tell me the St. Louis Mafia Orthodontic. I mean, God, St. Louis, you got DynaFlex, you got the American Association of Orthodontists, you got the Mid-Atlantic Ortho Meeting, you got, who the hell was born in St. Louis? Was Engel born there or something? Or how?
To be honest, I'm not even sure where Engel was born.
He's the father of orthodontics. He had to
Can we
be
Google
born.
That?
Yeah, he had to
let's
be.
Look that up.
So what is the St. Louis orthodontic connection?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just happenstance. I've only been to St. Louis once in my life. It seems like a beautiful city out there, but it was to take my American Board of Orthodontics exam.
Yeah. My God. So pretty much Where was he born? He was born, here it is, Edward Engel. He was born in Herricks, New York. He was the fifth of seven children. Yeah, he's the father of orthodontics. But yeah, I don't know. I've never figured out what the St. Louis orthodontic connection is. But basically in America, if you're a power broker in orthodontics, you're in St. Louis.
Well, there you go.
I mean, you agree? I agree. I mean, the AA, all of it. But anyway, so talk about your journey. You're doing clear aligners. And then you wanted a precision aligner button, and you got DynaFlex in St. Louis to make it for you. Is that what's going on?
More or less, yeah. So, just to back up a little bit, the genesis of this was really around, I'd say, 2015, 2016. And I was practicing as an associate for a husband and wife orthodontist in southern New Jersey. And his name is Dr. Richard Kay, and his wife is Dr. Mary Beth Marone. Lovely couple. And I would drive down there every Monday to practice. And we were doing quite a bit of Invisalign in that practice, probably about 50%. And what we found is that we certainly had a lot of patients that were class 2, class 3, and we would use either the small lingual buttons to hook the elastics up, or in other cases, we would use a second molar tube, bracket, basically. And we would just bond that sort of in the cervical third of the tooth. And we were having so many patients come back with either broken molar tubes or the lingual buttons were coming loose. And, the patients get annoyed. They don't want to have to come back. So, to me, I just looked at this and I turned to Dr. K and I said, how come these buttons aren't shaped to just fit in Invisalign's cutout like a puzzle piece? And he said, it's an interesting idea. Maybe you should run with that. Maybe you should do something with that. And, at that time, I was sort of doing the associate hustle, right? So I was working 5-6 days a week, trying to, pay off my student loans. And every week I'd come in and show up to their office. And basically, Rich would turn to me and say, what have you done with the idea? And I said, nothing. I've been busy, running around seeing 100 patients a day. And finally, one day, he turned to me and I said, Rich, let's go 50-50 on this. And so we ultimately partnered on it. And at that point, we had no idea how to invent a dental or orthodontic product whatsoever. I certainly knew of certain people in the orthodontic industry who are famous orthodontist inventors. Dwight Damon comes to mind with the Damon bracket. Louis Carrier, who invented Henry Schein's Carrier Motion, SLX brackets. But at the time, I wasn't on social media, so I really had no way of sort of reaching out to these orthodontist inventors. So we did basically what most people do is, instead of going to YouTube, we actually went to Amazon and we both got the same book. It was really an incredible book that you should check out, Howard. It's called One Simple Idea by Mr. Stephen Key.
One Simple Idea by Stephen Key?
Yes. So basically, what this book is about is, not all inventions are these incredible, big, huge ideas that require 20 years of computer development. Sometimes ideas are very simple and they're just a slight twist or variation on an existing product. So certainly, Dr. K and I did not invent any kind of orthodontic button, but buttons have been around for years, and it was almost like a sleeping dinosaur. No one really paid attention to buttons. And we sort of had an idea of how we can make these buttons better, because the original orthodontic buttons were really made for braces, and we wanted to make some buttons for aligners.
And so then so I looked it up. Actually, the 4th International Congress of Orthodontics was in St. Louis before Engel even moved there. So Ortho was in St. Louis, but he did move to St. Louis and convince the whatever to build the Engel School of Orthodontia. So then your next move was to get so you had this idea. So what did the book teach you? If you were on Shark Tank, that's what everybody knows. Mr. Wonderful, the Canadian, would say, hey, do you got any intellectual property? Is that the next step? Did you go get a patent attorney, or did you go make a prototype?
Not quite. So basically what we did as a next step is, after reading that book is really about the licensing process. And I'm not sure how familiar you are, Howard, with licensing. I certainly had heard of it. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I've heard of music licensing, but it basically sort of explained the whole model of when you license your intellectual property versus sort of venturing a business around it. So we found the book very intriguing. Stephen Key has a business partner. His name is Andrew Krause. They have sort of an inventing consulting service, and that's called InventRight. If you want to check out InventRight, RIGHT.com. And basically, it's a one-year program that sort of mentors and teaches inventors on how to bring a product idea to market. So Rich and I signed up for that program, and it was really fantastic. So they sort of walked us through the steps.
And so did you get a IP? Did you get a patent before you went to DynaFlex? That's what I'm wondering on the story. I mean, because a lot of dentists. Okay, so I'll save you a lot of frustration when dealing with me. Ever since I started Dental Town magazine in 1994 and the website in 98, I always get these dentists who send me a letter that says, "Hey, I need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement and sign this because I want to talk to you about this idea." And I'm like, well, I can't sign a non-disclosure. I mean, I'm a dentist. You know what I do. You read my columns. I mean, I've talked about everything in dentistry. I don't, if you need this, I just don't want to meet you, and I don't want to talk. I certainly don't want to feed the lawyers. And I learned this from Bob Ibsen, and Bob Ibsen owned Denman. He says, "Oh, these guys, they'll sell you you'll sign a non-consent clause. Then basically every idea you've ever said about dentistry your whole life, they think is covered in their non-compete clause." And Ibsen told me, he said, "Don't ever sign one of those damn things." Because he paid millions to get out of those things. So I'm just curious, did you get the IP first before you talked to DynaFlex, or did you go there and trust that they would listen to you without stealing your idea, or how did that work?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned non-disclosure agreements, because how you feel about them is how most companies feel about them. So, if you're a small inventor and you're approaching Align Technology or Henry Schein or even the dental side, Dentsply Sirona, and you're asking them to sign your non-disclosure, they're probably going to laugh in your face, to be honest. So, yes, you do need to find a way to protect yourself. But, there's a better way if there's any listeners that are dentists, that are inventors, rather than running straight to the patent attorney. Patent attorneys are great, but it does end up being quite expensive once you get into the process. But there's a really great tool from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. They're called the USPTO, and it's called a Provisional Patent Application, or a PPA. And basically, what a PPA is a patent pending. So it gives you protection for 1 year to be able to shop your idea and pitch it to different companies. So what we learned through this InventRight program is you can actually write a pretty good provisional patent application yourself and file it with the USPTO for about $150. So once that's on file, your product is patent pending, and you don't necessarily need a non-disclosure at that point, because you have basically identified what your idea is with the patent office, and that gives you the time to go ahead and see if there's any kind of market out there for your invention.
So where are you at now? Did you get the patent and and DynaFlex is making it and selling it and it's doing well, or what's the status right now?
Yeah, so the status right now is once we got the provisional patent, we approached a number of different companies, which I won't mention because I'm under NDA.
But what percent of those companies are within an hour's drive of St. Louis?
99%. No, I'm just kidding. So basically, we ended up licensing the product to a smaller orthodontic company out of New Jersey called Mid-Atlantic Orthodontics, or MAO. And so we were with them for about a year. We launched at the AAO meeting in 2018. And just recently, I think it was around March or April of 2019, DynaFlex acquired MAO. So then our product went on board with DynaFlex. But to answer your question, yes, the product is selling really well. We've been quite fortunate that orthodontists really have taken to it. They seem to like the product. It's certainly reducing a lot of the emergency visits and saving orthodontist chair time.
It's Dentistry Uncensored. So let's go after the controversial stuff. Let's not sugarcoat anything. So dentists are confused in dental schools today. They say when they go to dental school, if they need help doing a molar root canal, the endodontists are all on it, pulling a tooth. There's the oral surgeon. Everybody goes to help them. But when they say, I want to learn ortho, they say, well, then you need to go to ortho school. And then when you come out and you go to your state dental society, and they put on continuing education, the 50 state dental societies put on a huge majority of the continuing education. You can't put on a CE course by an orthodontist for the general dentist. It'd be easier just to go there and sell crack cocaine. And why? I mean, an endodontist could get approved all day long to teach general dentists how to do molar endo. An oral surgeon could say, I want to teach these guys how to lay flaps and pull wisdom teeth. Or everybody does that. But when it comes to ortho, they always want to say no. So are they just holding their ground? So my question to you is, like, is DynaFlex, is this all being sold to orthodontists? I mean, do they even promote it to general dentists? Do you lecture to general dentists? Are you promoting this to general dentists?
At this point, I'm not promoting this to general dentists, but just to back up a little bit in terms of sort of this adversarial relationship between general dentists and orthodontists, to be honest, I don't 100% know where this came from.
But you agree it's there?
I think to some extent, maybe it's more unspoken. Sometimes there could be a tension. Certainly since I was a general dentist, I've been on both sides of this, right? So I can see it from both perspectives. Obviously, this is a tough question, but I'm on Dentistry Uncensored. So I would say that, from an orthodontist perspective, I don't think most of us have issues with general dentists doing orthodontics. It's just a matter of sort of knowing your limits. And sometimes if you maybe don't completely understand everything, some of the cases that at least some general dentists send me are pretty complex cases that maybe they're looking at as simple cases, if that makes sense. So I think maybe that's why some orthodontists might get frustrated. It's not that general dentists are doing bad ortho. In fact, I had a general dentist today transfer me a couple cases. He does very nice ortho, I think. But it's just if general dentists maybe just get a little too aggressive with it, perhaps, maybe that's where it comes from. But at the same time, I think as orthodontists, we need to all realize that we're all on the same team, right? There's other companies out there like Smile of Regret Club, like we talked about.
Yeah, that's what I loved the most about Smiles Direct Club is I thought, the hidden lining here, it's going to bring the orthodontist and the dentist together, because those guys, they figured that out in California the first day. The orthodontist said, well, who's going to save us is the CDA and getting all these dentists and the courts. And so I think it's actually, I love Smiles Regret Club because I think it's going to make the orthodontists and dentists know more than ever they're on the same damn team.
We are.
Yeah, so quit. For sure. Don't compete with the general dentist. Compete with the big screen TV. I mean, you wouldn't believe how much money these people spend on cruises and all that stuff. They got money. They just only want to spend it where they're spending it. So Invisalign, when Invisalign ever does something that the orthodontist doesn't like they bought Invisalign's owned by Align Technology. They own iTero, and then they quit taking scans from BioLace out of Copenhagen, Denmark, or whatever. I always say to the orthodontist, I say, well, you know what? If you don't like them, why just quit using them? You use another brand. Nah, I like their... So even the patents are up. There's about 40 clear aligner companies. Every orthodontist I know, they love the Invisalign system. Is it the polymers? Is it the system? Is it the... What is it? I mean, because you can't piss them off enough to make them switch brands. I mean, I know orthodontists that can't talk about Invisalign or Align or the Rogan guy without profanity. But man, they sure use only their stuff. So there's got to be something amazing about the product compared to the generics and knockoffs.
I think it depends on which orthodontist you talk to in terms of how amazing the product is. I would classify orthodontist relationships with Align Technology as it's complicated, right? We've just had a complicated relationship over the years. Certainly there's no love lost, I think, probably on either side. But I think why orthodontists are maybe sticking with Invisalign is that, a lot of the products that are coming out, at least ones that I've seen, whether it's, Henry Schein, SLX, or 3M Clarity, or Ormco has Spark now. Some of these other aligners that are coming out, they're sort of in their infancy stages. And even just the software for treatment planning, Align had a huge jumpstart with ClinCheck. So it's much more advanced in terms of the features and attachment design. And, of course, they have their Smart Track material. And it was quite a learning curve for a lot of us orthodontists and dentists to learn this whole ClinCheck software, learn the process. So at this point, we're comfortable with it. We know what we need to do to make it work. We know if we need to over-engineer a ClinCheck or over-correct things. And so when you're switching to a different brand, it's sort of like starting over again. And a lot of these other companies that have come out with aligners, their lab fees aren't that significantly different to make a lot of people jump ship. If anything, they're maybe a couple $100 less than Invisalign on a lot of the cases. So I think a lot of doctors at this point are just sort of hanging tight.
Interesting. So what is your next goal, and what are you trying to achieve now with your new product, the precision aligner buttons?
Well, the first precision aligner buttons we came out, they're really designed for upper lower molars. So it's a metal button, and it just sort of fits perfectly in that precision cut window. So after talking to a lot of doctors, we got demand for a clear button. So just in a couple months here, we'll be rolling out a new clear precision aligner button, which we're very excited about. And it's universal, upper, lower, left, right. It fits perfectly right in the cervical third of a crown for any canine or premolar tooth. So that's the big news there, big reveal. First here, Howard, we're revealing it. And then I have another product with Hugh Freedy that will be coming out soon too.
Now, Hugh Freedy, that's Premier?
It'll be in the Clear collection.
The Clear collection. We'll talk about the Hugh Freedy.
So with Hugh Freedy, I don't want to go into too many details, but I can give a little teaser that we're developing an instrument that will punch within any aligner the perfect shape of our precision aligner button. So whether if you're using the Invisalign system, you're probably ordering the prefabricated precision cut windows, but some of the other systems don't necessarily have the cutout windows, or a lot of orthodontists now are basically fabricating their own aligners in-house, 3D printing. So this instrument will be great for punching holes in that plastic.
And what do you think of the 3D printing and all that? Do you see yourself printing your aligner trays sometime soon?
Personally, I've done a little bit with ULab Systems, and I know you had those guys on your podcast recently. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great software. Most of the cases I've done for in-house aligners, and I use the Formlabs printer. Most of the cases I would say are more relapse cases, mild to moderate. I know some doctors that are doing a lot of in-house aligners, Dr. Ruz Khosravi in Washington State. I also have a friend, Dr. Brian Lockhart in North Carolina. He's doing a lot of in-house aligners. They're getting great results. But for me, I don't have the team to sort of train and do all the manufacturing. So to sort of outsource that just makes more sense for me at this point.
And why did you pick Premier? Is it because Patrick Bernardi, you love Chicago? What was Premier? You just thought they were the best making the instruments?
I do love Hugh Freedy instruments. Probably this dates back to my days of being a general dentist. I thought they had fantastic instruments, and I just had a mutual connection, Dr. Jay Bowman, who put me in touch with them. He had invented a couple instruments, and they're a great company to work with.
Yeah, and it's an old company.
100 years old.
Yeah, it's what? How old?
100 years, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I'm telling you that whenever I went on vacation, I always stopped at the dental manufacturer of that area. I mean, I've done it my whole life because that's what my dad did. When we went on vacation, we always went to the Six Flags over whatever, and then we'd stop by, some company. And my God, when you go into a dental company, they're the most passionate about their products. They show you how it's made. It's that hands-on show, touch, feel. You just can't remember that stuff. I remember watching Emperor Gum being made in gosh darn Germany, like in the 80s, and I can still remember climbing up the ladder and looking in. You know what I mean? I mean, you'd never forget that's just how humans learn. What else are you passionate about? What's got you excited these days?
Well, outside of aligners, trying to think what other hot topics in orthodontics we have. Certainly outside of orthodontics, I'm passionate about music. If you'd like to talk about Relapse.
Well, I think when I think of ortho, I think the dentist, the general dentist, the patient. I always look at the crowding, the overbite, the overjet, whatever. But when you think of orthodontics, you're a board-certified orthodontist. What's more difficult, straightening up those teeth or the retention?
Probably straightening the teeth is the easy part. Retention is always tough.
Oh man, yeah. You don't even know how bad you are in ortho till you've seen all your cases 5-10 years after they're done. I mean, and in fact, orthodontics is weird. Like I live in Phoenix. And by the time I'm 57, I got 4 kids, 5 grandkids. Everybody my age, they've all done ortho at least twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of patients come in. And, I think it's different than it used to be maybe 10, 20 years ago when orthodontics was maybe a once, or if you had 2-phase orthodontic twice in a lifetime type thing. I almost think orthodontics has become similar to something like getting Botox injections, that people sort of, or at least patients sort of look at it like, oh, I didn't wear my retainer. Let me go get a touch-up, an orthodontic touch-up. And that's really where certain direct-to-consumer companies are sort of stepping in because, with that lower price point, with the convenience, people can sort of, I just want to fix this one tooth and, make this one rotated lateral incisor a little better.
Getting a patent is a really rare thing. I mean, it's just a really rare thing. In fact, they'll even tell you 99% of all patents will never generate enough money to pay for the
That's
patent
true. I've
attorney.
heard that statistic. Yeah.
And you've got several patents.
I have one patent granted, and I have several pending. And not just provisional patents, utility and design patents.
So You got to be wicked smart. I mean, you're like 3rd-generation doctor in your family too, right?
That is true. I don't know if I'm wicked smart, but thank you, Howard.
No, you got to be to get all these patents and patent pendings. I mean, that's no small feat. I mean, you can even predict. You can just lay out the 220 countries, how many patents they've issued in the last year, decade, century, and it just perfectly lines up with GDP. I mean, you don't get any patents, you're not gonna have any money. So where does this come from though?
It's hard to say where it comes from. I don't know how much it has to do with being a 3rd-generation doctor. I think a lot of it just comes from being a creative person. And I think a lot of dentists in general have that creativity. It's just a matter of sort of unlocking it and then capitalizing on that creativity, which is pretty cool about this patent process, which I've gone through. I think inherently, in dentistry, it's sort of that mix of art and science, right? So it's just sort of tapping into maybe that artistic side that allows us to sort of think of things maybe a little bit differently.
So what year did you get out of dental school first time?
2005.
Okay, so 2005. Try to go back to that place. I know it's 2019, but try to roll your brain back to 2005. She's coming out of school. She's $285,000 in debt. When she looks across the globe of 7.7 billion people going to 2 million dentists, everything in dentistry is growing at about, 2 to 3.5% a year like clockwork. The only 2 areas growing in double digit are implants and clear aligners. End of story. It's not, and a lot of diseases are going down, right? So she's got $285,000. She's only 25, and she's got her eyes on clear aligners or implants. What would you do now? What would you tell her to do now that you know in 2019 that you didn't know in 2005? I mean, I mean,
Good
obviously
question.
you're going to be attracted to the double-digit growth factors as opposed to the 1.5 to 3.5, right?
No, you are. I don't think you should, coming right out of dental school, I don't think you should necessarily go and try to do what everyone's doing. Or, you mentioned, implants, clear aligners. It's great to learn a little bit about that. But as a dentist, you have to sort of really find what you're particularly passionate about, and then go ahead and go out and get some additional continuing education to really learn about those things. Sometimes going into areas where not everyone is necessarily headed in that direction, you're going to be able to differentiate yourself better. So if all the dentists are coming out and everyone's trying to do clear aligners, I think it makes sense to sort of head in a different direction and possibly offer some different services that other people aren't.
Like what? Anything come to your mind?
Oh, from a orthodontic perspective, lingual braces would be an option. So there's a really cool company out now called Embrace. I don't know if you've heard of it. Dr. John Pham is the CEO of Embrace. And it's sort of like a reinvented lingual bracket system with these new CAD/CAM wires. Sometimes we focus so much on clear aligners and, again, as we mentioned, a lot of these direct-to-consumer companies are coming out. But people can't get lingual braces from a direct-to-consumer company. So that would just be, one example.
Yeah, and what is your thoughts on that company? I mean, do you like lingual? I mean, back in the day in '87, the problem with lingual braces is your tongue would chew it up. I mean, your tongue could leave it alone and it'd turn into raw hamburger. What's it look like now?
It's a self-ligating system because of these CAD/CAM nickel titanium wires. It doesn't require power chaining or things like that for space closure. To be honest, I haven't done any cases. It looks super promising, though. I'm very intrigued by it. But just to get to your point in terms of people coming out of school, certainly dental implants, certainly you're going to want to learn about it. Certainly you're going to want to learn about clear aligners and things like that. But, there's other things out there in dentistry. You just don't want to do what everyone else is doing.
What about implants? Where does implantology meet orthodontics? In the last 10 years, do you see more implants being worked into orthodontic treatment? Do you see less? Where's the junction of that look like?
Probably, again, I sort of came out of dental school 2005, and implants were huge back then because that was sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Howard, but that was sort of the time when people had the mindset, I'm just going to take the tooth out and put an implant, right?
Right.
And then maybe things have swayed back a little bit, maybe more towards the middle of, trying to save that tooth a little bit more. So I think I probably see fewer implants now. Certainly, I know when I was doing my orthodontic residency, anyone with missing maxillary lateral incisors, we were talking about implants. And, there's some cases that turn out really nice, but I've seen other cases where there's sort of a latent vertical growth. And then all of a sudden, the top of the implant, the collar is sort of exposed and it doesn't look very aesthetic.
Wow. So I found that Embrace is a new style of braces that hides behind the teeth. So you'd recommend that they go learn Embrace?
For orthodontists, yeah, I think it's a cool product. It's a way to differentiate yourself. It's hard to always try to propose yourself out there or posture yourself as the Invisalign or the aligner expert because so many people are doing aligners.
Right. So what is their website, Embrace? Is it myembrace.com?
I believe that's correct.
Myembrace.com. So that's interesting. I want to go back to, I want to ask about board-certified orthodontics. I've noticed that orthodontists seem to be more motivated to go get board certified than, say, your prosthodontist or your endodontist. Explain your journey. Why did you want to be a board certified orthodontist? Is that something for just dentists who refer to you, or does the B2C consumer market, like when you're driving around Bradenton, Florida, do people know that some orthodontists are board certified and others aren't?
Absolutely not.
Right.
I can't think of any situation where a patient, asked if I was board certified, because, if you look at the model with physicians, most physicians have to be board certified to practice. So I don't think it's a big differentiator in terms of attracting patients. The whole process. Do most physicians have to be board certified to practice? From what I understand, I could be off base on that, but I think most of the public does assume that, if you're a orthodontist, a periodontist, an oral surgeon, that you're probably board certified. Even probably general dentists, the public would think are board certified by the dental board, right? Which is true. We take the dental boards. Mm-hmm. But as far as, why I particularly went for board certification, that was something that was really sort of pushed by my program at Jacksonville University. They really supported it. They thought it was a great thing for the specialty to go ahead and get board certified. So we take the first part, which is the written exam, before we actually graduate residency. So then it was just a matter of presenting cases. And at the time I took it, it was 6 clinical cases that you had to present. And then there was also an in-person sort of interview style exam that you did as well.
Right on. So would you recommend the other orthodontists become board certified? I mean, do you think that would be worth their time? I mean, like I tell general dentists they should get their FAGD, MAGD. I think it was the best decision I ever made. Do you think getting board certified is something that you wholeheartedly recommend all the other orthodontists, or is it a case by case?
No, I certainly would recommend it. I don't regret doing it. I think it's a really good process in terms of self-reflection, looking at your own cases. We don't always have time to do that in private practice because it's always, sort of looking forwards, but it's nice to look back and just really reflect. And you learn a lot about yourself as a clinician in areas to improve. So I thought it was a fantastic process. With the American Board of Orthodontics, you do have to renew every 10 years. And I believe mine's up in 2023, and I definitely plan on renewing. Interesting.
What other advice would you give that 25-year-old kid? I mean, I've been telling her for 1,200 shows that if I had to look back for 32 years and said, what one behavior could you measure that tracks success closer to anything, I would say it was number of hours of CE a year. The junkies, the addicts who took 100 hours a year for 30 years, they did whatever they want. They had the money. They bought all the toys. They always seemed the happiest. And the ones who were always mad that they had to take 12 hours to get their license renewed every 3 years. I would say the ones who took CE, that was the best decision. And number 2 was the ones who made friends and camaraderie with their other colleagues instead of all looking at them as fear and scarcity. Everyone in dentistry is not a predator. You guys, they're your colleagues. So I would say mentors, CE, and colleagues. What would you recommend?
I think you nailed it right there, Howard. Certainly in terms of my professional career, I didn't quite realize the value of continuing education probably until I became an orthodontist. So those first 3 years that I was a general dentist, I was just so excited to be done with school. In my own particular case, I went straight through from college to dental school. I did a general practice residency. I couldn't wait to get out there, apply the things I learned, make money, start paying back my loans. The last thing on my mind was, taking a Friday off to go to a continuing education course. But after I became an orthodontist, I think my mindset did change. And the value of continuing education that I'd like to tell maybe the young doctors listening is you really will learn to sort of differentiate yourself. You need to find what you're passionate about and really focus in on that. There's going to be areas of dentistry that you probably don't care that much about. So don't worry, learn the basics, but you don't have to go crazy doing continuing education in that regard. But I think in this past 2 years, my Florida dental license is up for renewal. I think I did 100 plus hours myself. In terms of CE.
So, the natural selection of, I had dinner with Jack Dillenberg, who this last weekend, and he was the founding dean of the dental school in Mesa, Arizona for 10 years. And I always talk with him about this natural selection thing where, if to get in dental school, you got to have A's in math, physics, chemistry, you're going to be this introvert guy in the library. I mean, and every time you walk into a dental office, that receptionist was only hired because she reminded Doc of the perfect librarian. I mean, she's this shy thing that doesn't talk, and it just smells like a library. But you're of all the areas of dentistry, your area has the most marketing competition. I mean, all the average orthodontist markets, advertises, social media twice as much as a general dentist. In fact, when I have these practice management consultants in the room, they're trying to get general dentists to commit 3% of collections to marketing. They've all got orthodontist clients that routinely do 6, 7, 8% on marketing. So is there a disconnect between an introvert orthodontist who got A's in physics and chemistry and thought Sir Isaac Newton was Mick Jagger? Now he has to be a social media Instagram influencer guy. Is that a disconnect?
I don't know if that's necessarily a disconnect. I do think it certainly helps to get yourself out there. And, something I've learned later in my career, now that I've been out in practice for a while, is that in the beginning, as an associate, I just thought my role was to sort of show up and see patients. I figured I was hired because they had a lot of extra patients, or maybe the practice owner was doing more on the practice management side. And really, it was just to do dentistry and do it well. But at the end of the day, you got to go home. But now that I've been out in practice a while, and I'm still an associate at this point in my career, you really do have to market. Dentistry has changed a lot, as you mentioned on your podcast quite often. And really, we have to continue to bring those new patients in. And, I'm sure many of your young doctors are on social media already. But, it goes beyond social media to really build a practice. And, what I've learned in the last year, it's really just about making connections. It's about meeting people, having lunches with other dentists, getting involved in the community, whether that's through a church or possibly through your kids' activities. Really, I think that's the best way to meet people and attract new patients.
So I want to go back to St. Louis. So are you a member of the American Orthodontic Association? Is that
yes?
Okay,
yes.
Talk about that, because a lot of the kids tell me, they always say, well, I got $285,000 student loans, and the ADA. I got asked this twice this weekend. Well, why can't I just join Arizona? I don't want to join the national. Why do I have to join the tripartite system? I just want to be local CADs. I don't even want to be all Arizona. And I'm always sitting there thinking, when I hear that question, I don't think they even know how America even works. I mean, it's just a political bribe machine. You go raise a bunch of money, you bribe all these people for their campaign funds. When they get there, they pass laws to pay you back. I mean, I think they still believe in truth, liberty, and justice. And they don't realize that if you're not up there wheeling and dealing in the corrupt bribery machine, they'll lose their profession.
I see where you're coming from on that. I personally am a huge proponent of being a member of the American Association of Orthodontics as an orthodontist, and I'm an ADA member, which, some orthodontists feel I'm an orthodontist. Why do I need to be a part of the ADA? Just like you mentioned, it's hugely important to be a part of organized dentistry. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of.
Well, I mean, you'd have to be naive. I mean, do you think Delta wants more dentists or less dentists? Do you think they want to pay you more money or less money? I mean, look at Smiles Direct Club. They wish all the orthodontists were moved to Angola. I mean, it's just the nature of humans. I mean, look at Homo sapien. I just ask them all the time, and they say, "You think they would do that?" I'm like, well, where are the Neanderthals? Where are the Denisovans? Where's Homo erectus? Where's Homo? I'm pretty sure you killed off every Homo. We're the last remaining tribe of Homos, and you think we're these innocent little children who all want to get along in the sandbox and sing Kumbaya? It's a bloodbath, and I don't think Smiles Direct even. I think Smiles Direct. I think they're. I sensed it. I saw it where. It was going along. The orthodontists didn't like it. They were interested in the technology, the teledentistry. But man, when they started suing some dental boards in Canada for speaking out or asking questions, the minute they slammed them, I knew. I said that this is going to take about 8 seconds, and 200,000 dentists are going to get out their fly swatter and smack these guys around, and they did. They absolutely did. I mean, so anyway. If you're not paying dues, and if the most part of that dues isn't going to Congress, politicians, you remember if I print money, I go to jail. They call it the fractional reserve system. I mean, it's just the way it is. But if you lose the government side of your profession, well, all you got to do is open a history book and see how that worked out. So going back to St. Louis, DynaFlex, that's another orthodontic powerhouse. So what, are you a big, do you use DynaFlex a lot? Are they the main maker of your two products?
Yeah, they're the main maker of our two products. To be honest with you, I'm sort of new to DynaFlex. So, our product has just been with them for the past 6 months. Hugely impressed with their CEO, Darren Budemeyer, starting to use more of their products, but I wasn't as much of a user previously.
Yeah, I've known those guys for 32 years. Those Midwestern companies like St. Louis. I mean, it's like NDIC out of Iowa. I mean, those guys at DynaFlex, the only thing they know is how to work 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, from age 25 to 75. I mean, they don't even know any different. But yeah, that's a powerhouse company. So I can't believe we're coming up on an hour, but I want to go back to that 25-year-old who. When I'm sensing they come out of school, you can split the herd in half. There's the pretty, fluffy ones who don't like blood and guts, and they like bleaching, bonding, and clear liners. And then there's guys like me who, man, they like blood and guts extract. I mean, when I wash my hands, I want to see blood on my bald head. And if there's not blood and guts, it's not even fun. So if she's soft and pretty and fluffy and bleaching, bonding veneers and photography and wanted to do clear aligners and join the AACD and be a cosmetic dentist, what advice would you give her?
Oh, well. Certainly you want to divert, if you just only want to do aesthetic dentistry, I think you really need to be balanced, right? So you're going to have to learn a little bit of everything. I think to go extremely into one direction or another, you're going to regret that a little bit later in your career. Well put and well wise, because the last, I've lived through the economic meltdowns several times, and I graduated high school in 1980. That was the worst, 87. But every time there's a meltdown, the blood and guts ones are the only ones who do just the same. People can put off bleaching, bonding, and veneers during the Lehman's Day crisis. But again, I just want to review you real quick. That is true. That's a very good point. The average oral surgeon makes $448, periodontist $330, endo $307, pediatric dentist $304, orthodontists are the first ones that drops below the 300. They're $289, prosthodontist $219, general dentist drop below the 200. They're at $184. So when you look at that, I mean, it's just blood and guts. Pulling a tooth is, and by the way, when I find oral surgeons who only do exodontia, their overhead's 40%. When I find them that mostly it's an implant practice, their overhead's 60%. So they're not pricing their overhead correctly, but extracting a tooth, doing simple endo, doing fillings, doing cleanings, exams, and x-rays. I mean, get to be, what you just said, if it was Warren Buffett talking, he'd say, be diversified. So if you said, I want to have all my money in Enron in one stock, he'd say, well, that's a really bad idea.
Pediatric dentist. There's a Dentistry Uncensored. For the 32 years I've been on here, there's been a couple of low key to medium key beefs about a pediatric dentist in time doing all of his phase 1. And then when the orthodontist cross street gets his kid 10 years later for phase 2, the orthodontist, the benefits been fried. Anyway, there's been some rivalries there between phase 1 pediatric dentists and phase 2 orthodontists. Does that look any different to you today than it did than it used to?
Believe it or not, where I've practiced, which is New Jersey and Florida, I haven't seen a ton of pediatric dentists doing phase 1 ortho in those areas. So personally, I haven't really experienced that rivalry firsthand. I've heard some of your other podcasts with orthodontists where you've mentioned it. But I don't know. It's just one that I guess I'm just not feeling the pressure or the tension of that. I seem to get along great with my pediatric dentists.
So you were born in New Jersey?
That's correct.
So, but you're a Mick Jagger fan and not a Bruce Springsteen?
Oh, I love the boss.
Are you?
Come on. Yeah. Yeah, never got huge into Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi's the other prodigal son of New Jersey, but I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. I have almost every album on vinyl.
Really? And how would you line them, Bruce or Mick Jagger?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably a little bit more of a Stones fan. Yeah, I'm a Stones. I love the Beatles too. Led Zeppelin as well.
Yeah. Now, there's a guy in Arizona, and his whole office is in rock and roll mobilia, electric guitars. I mean, it's a hoot and a hit. Sounds
like I better get over there.
Is your love for music? Are you working that into your personality, your marketing, your Instagram? Is that part of your shtick?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, in today's day and age, I think patients want to see what you do in your personal life. When I came out of school, that was sort of taboo, is you just wanted to have your shirt and tie on and be very proper and sort of present that stereotypical image of what a dentist should look like. But today's day and age of social media, I think patients do like to see that you have other interests and hobbies. And sometimes that opens up conversation with patients, right? I might mention that I like music and I play bass, and they might read my bio and say, oh, that's so cool you play bass. I happen to play guitar or drums or cello. I think it's good to talk about your interests and hobbies.
I used to always have this conversation with Bob Ibsen. I saw so many times where I wanted to talk about something or in Dental Town or he'd have me come lecture to his group, and I'd be trying to get him to come up on stage. I said, well, Bob, just come up here in 20 minutes. And I just want him to tell me what he told me in the car from the airport to the deal. But that generation, they just couldn't promote themselves. And then that'd look like self-promotion. Like, it's a great story. They'll love it. They'll let you engage it. But they had so many mental blocks about self-promotion. And
yeah. And I don't know when that sort of generational or thought process shift even really occurred. But you're right. I think an older generation, they maybe looked at that, like you said, as promoting themselves. And you sort of have to share your story so people can learn about you. And you want to inspire people, you want them to connect with you. So, it's important to reveal, certain things. You don't want to reveal everything, obviously.
So staying on Dentistry Uncensored, not talking about anything everybody agrees on. I still keep hearing it a lot, and it's just a huge intellectual mistake. Like it's extremism. I mean, when you tell me that everything is A and there's nothing B, I mean, it just doesn't happen. And I'm talking about 4 bicuspid extraction. I know so many locals who, they quit referring to an orthodontist because he recommended 4 bicuspid extraction, and they say, I don't believe in that. Well, I don't care what you believe in. I mean, the universe doesn't care what you believe in. Do you think the Big Bang really cares what you think about it? I mean, the bottom line is, if you think 8 billion people can all have their teeth straightened without any extractions, you should tell a doctor. I mean, do you agree or disagree? I'm a non-extractionist philosophically, but you're absolutely right, Howard. There's times when you have to extract, and I don't believe that necessarily
causes airway problems. Really you have to just sort of look at the size of the jaws, the size of the alveolar bone, the relative tooth size. I mentioned before in New Jersey, I had a different patient population than I have now in Florida. When I was in New Jersey, I probably did 5% extraction, 10%. Now I'm working on a slightly different, ethnic populations, and I'm finding that I'm extracting closer to 20%, just because we're finishing a lot of cases and the teeth are flared way out to tomorrow, and the patients notice it. They may not be able to articulate exactly.
What ethnicity is this? Because like class 3s are all in Japan, right? I mean.
Well, not necessarily all in Japan.
But I mean,
yeah.
the highest proportion of any population with class 3 is Japanese, right?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
In my particular practice now, we have a lot of Latino patients, a lot from South America, and there have been cases that I felt like I was the hero by finishing this non-extraction, doing IPR, and the parents have come back. I actually had one parent say, "My child looks like a horse," which I thought was terrible. But I think patients really do know when those upper incisors are upright, and they sort of understand. They can't articulate smile arc, but they sort of get it. It sort of it resonates. A smile can sort of pop, I guess. And so when the teeth are flared out and you have this super proclined incisors, it just doesn't look right. So by bringing them back in, you're not necessarily impeding the airway space, the tongue space. It really just depends on the individual.
I had one patient. You can't even make this up. The dad was 6'6" and about 280. And the mom was like 5 foot and 100 pounds. And here comes in their little 12-year-old with dad's teeth and mom's jaws. Yeah, and I'm sitting here showing this to my buddy. I said, are you still non-extraction? Because at this point, we're looking at 4 wisdom teeth, 4 bicuspids, and even like a central. I would have pulled my hair out if I had any. And here's my crazy friend saying, well, I still wouldn't do extraction.
Yeah. It's funny, as I get further into my career, I'm probably starting to do more extraction, believe it or not, because, non-extraction was sort of the hot thing for me coming right out of residency. And, you want to treat everybody non-extraction if you could. And what I was finding with my cases is that a lot of the second molars were completely soft tissue impacted. And so there was, yes, we were resolving the anterior crowding, but then you had this huge posterior crowding situation. So it's something to consider too with extraction is, at least for me, I want to get those second molars completely in so the patient's able to clean the distal aspect.
Yeah. I love it. What I love even more is you see all this different views and opinions in the United States, because a lot of people that live here think it's a really big country. Hell, it's not even 4.5% of the population of the world. I mean, it's only 230 million out of 7.7 billion. I love hearing the debates and all the other countries going on. Like when you're in Scandinavia, the big debate, how we have the view of the wisdom teeth. Well, no one chews on it, throw it away, just pull it, don't put any money into it. A lot of Scandinavia feels that way about second molars. There are endodontists in Scandinavia that say, well, why would you save a second molar? They don't chew on it, throw it away. And they'll say, I've been an endodontist for 30 years and I only have one person a decade that says, I wish I would have saved that too. You pull it, and next time you see him, oh no, I don't miss it. No chew. So the variance around the world is very
interesting,
very fun to watch. And so then I start looking at numbers like, well, what percent of the endodontist revenue is just from second molars? Well, it's huge, because the general dentists are going to do all the easy layups. So it's like if you implemented that in the United States of America, the 4,000 endodontists would all take a significant hit. But if you start getting tuned into things like this, start asking all the patients you see that are missing their lower second molar or a second molar anywhere and say, do you miss that tooth? If you went to a restaurant and gave you a menu or something, you wouldn't. No one misses that tooth. But
yeah, but to be fair, I think you could probably say that about if someone was congenitally missing their lower second premolars, right? They probably wouldn't miss that tooth, or patients are only going to miss the teeth that are showing if they have a jack-o'-lantern smile, right?
Yeah, it's beauty first, isn't it? It's the aesthetic health compromise. It's what's it look like? Beauty trumps form and function.
There you go.
All right. Well, hey, I can't believe it's been an hour. Christopher Cetta, DMD, board-certified orthodontist at Blue Wave Orthodontics. His website's Blue Wave Ortho. But put his name in YouTube. Are you going to post those YouTube videos? On Dental Town, when you make a post, they have that YouTube button. So when you go to your YouTube button, and you can hit share, and it'll give you a link. But the next button over is embed. You hit that, you copy that, you can drop the whole video on. And whenever you do it on Dental Town, your YouTube videos will explode because it's the YouTube video and a message board. But I wish you'd post those YouTube videos in there. And because I think when dentists learn how to do ortho, general dentists, they actually don't do more ortho, but they sure get better at diagnosing and treatment planning and working with their orthodontist better. But Christopher, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Howard.